come from the installer side, so the business side of things is more the struggle for me. Like,
Mm.
I could shingle a roof with my eyes closed, and which has definitely been an advantage in growing the company because I can hire a crew and go out and watch them or work with them, and I can tell you within a couple hours or less if they know what they're doing because I've done it, since I was a child, starting out cleaning up. And you know I remember I finally got to use the nail gun one day shingling a storage shed, and I was so excited to be able to take that next little step up. And so yeah, I've done everything literally from clean up on the ground all the way to running my own company. So
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Talk us through that transition. So you started your own business, and then you're kind of, what was the first moment you're like, oh, it is different when I'm the owner and not just working in the business. Was there like a moment that you remember that was like, oh shoot?
I don't know if there was any one particular moment. I mean, there's a lot of little moments throughout the time, but I can definitely say, having done both the installing and the business side of things, if I could make the same amount of money and grow the company the same doing the installing, I would much rather do that. Like, it's physically hard and physically demanding, but when you come home at the end of the day and, you can look back when you leave that job and see what you accomplished, and you come home and you're physically exhausted, that's a great feeling. When you
Yeah.
have been, doing the business side of things all day and physically you're fine, but like mentally and emotionally you're exhausted and stressed, like that's worse. That's not a good feeling. So having
Mm.
done both, the business part of things is much harder. I tell my wife all the time, like, I'd love to go back and just nail shingles on a roof. Like, that's easy.
Yeah, man, that's yeah, that is a struggle. I mean, I feel the same thing. Obviously, different kind of business, software, but it's like the mental exhaustion because then you're going home, you have your relationships, your family, and then you're having to kind of pull out. You got to pull that next level of energy
Hmm.
out so you can be there for them. Do you have any tips for that? Like, what have you found to help you to manage your relationships and have that balance?
Well, one of the things that I did a few years ago is I got an office. It wasn't really intentional. We lived on a couple of acres previously, and so I could park all my trailers there, and I had leftover materials there. And then about 4 years ago, we moved into a bigger house but much smaller property, and we didn't. It was in a neighborhood. I didn't want to store materials there and trash the place. So I was like, well, I'm gonna get an office, and so that was one of the biggest things for me was to be able to not only the physical separation of the home from the work really helped with the mental separation because I can leave the office at the end of the day and shut the lights off, and you're still constantly thinking about the business, but it's just easier. Like, that physical walking out of the office makes it easier to kind of leave everything at the office. So that helped a lot. And then just, you know, when you get home, I mean, there's times I'll come home and I'll park in the garage and I'll just kind of sit in my truck for 2 or 3 minutes or 5 minutes. And, sometimes the kids will run out because they hear me pull in, but it's just like, that's my time to just like gather my thoughts. Like, okay, I'm shutting off the business. I'm turning on the home life. You have to make like a conscious mental effort to just be like, okay, these are separate. I'm going to separate them, and it's not always possible, and it's not always easy. There's always some muddying of the waters there, but that just kind of helps to just make a really intentional effort to separate the two because it doesn't happen automatically. If you don't do it intentionally, they're going to be merged into one very easily.